There we go, and then we're recording, so I'm just going to mute now. Thank you. Fantastic. Okay, so yes, as I said, welcome to the Claromentis drop-in session today. We're going to be covering, as I just briefly mentioned, Innovate, Idea Spaces, and Knowledge Base. The way that I've structured this, basically, the first one we're going to look at is going to be the quickest one, and that's going to be Innovate. So I'm going to quickly give you a little overhaul of the application, make sure everyone gets an understanding. And of course, as I said, Adam, there was a question that you posed in regards to Innovate, and it's permissions and securities. So we'll be able to answer that while I'm going through the demonstration. Okay, so as we can see, we're on the front screen here of the Claromentis Super Demo. And naturally, like the majority, or quite a large amount, should I say, of our clients, we obviously have the Innovate panel and component pulled in through onto the front screen. So as you can see here, it's a general. The description we sort of use is a corporate social media device, and it's a bit of a mix between Facebook and Twitter. So of course, similar to what you would normally expect, we have like a wall-esque thing, so you can add your comments here, see and review what other people have mentioned, reply, like, anything along those lines. And of course, considering if you have the correct permissions, you can edit and delete these if necessary. So as a user, I could simply just type in here, and, here we go. And then I can simply just share that. That will post, and that will be there. It's basically our version here. It defaults to what's called the general chat channel, and then of course it will display in there, and everyone else can review that similar to how they've done on others. So this of course is just the general component, and this is what's being pulled through from the actual application of Innovate. So what we can actually do other than this is, if we go to our applications menu, we can go to Innovate as the application itself, and we'll see it from a different perspective. So here we can see a little different sort of layout for the Innovate. So in the middle here, we've got our general wall, similar to how it was on the front end, but we've got another couple of things representing different things on the sides. So we have a search box, which you can choose to type in a user's name or a keyword which you're trying to look for, and it'll identify that. So say, for instance, I can see down there, NVC. Such, and that'll highlight the specific word, etc., and point out that. And you can, again, as I said, do that with names. So there we go, and that'll find things that Nigel's done. You can see further down, we've got people who are following you. So again, from a social component in terms of something like Twitter, and people that you are following. So the only things that these really have a representation of course, is just, looking at this from a very ego boosting perspective is one thing. It's very nice, but you'll also notice on the left hand side we've got channels. So these channels are where, and basically it's a good way to answer your question that you had prior to this, Adam. And questions are where you can sort of regulate who sees what information, and you can hide and mask certain channels, etc., with permissions. So first off, as you can see, me being an administrator, etc., I have a large plethora of different channels here. So I can click on a different one, hide that, remove that, and then we can see that we've got that. Finance, and these are all of course different chats. They're different conversations about different things within each channel. So as a user, if you have access to these, as I said, on the front end, we're defaulting to the permission, the general chat, but this can change depending on, when you're on the application, which one you're going to post into. So we were posting on general there. We can easily change and post into something like finance, just type in there, etc., etc. You'll also see up at the top here is your personal feed. So up here, this will show you everything that you've posted, and it's basically an archive of that. But it will also, as you can see here, it's got a list of different users, and this is going to be information from people that you are currently following. So you can use this as a tool to potentially, if there's, for instance, a director or some important senior manager role, and this person makes significant important posts, maybe like once a month, something along those lines, and you never want to particularly miss them, you can, for instance, follow that senior manager, and those posts will always show up in your personal feed. So it's a good way to keep tabs on, perhaps relevant information or something relatively important. So from a front end, at least from a user's perspective, is that all making sense so far? I know you can't obviously speak back, but if there is any questions, put them in the chat. I will have a look, as I said, in regards to sort of permissions and regulating who can see what in terms of security, etc. As I said, this human resources chat channel might be, sensitive and specific information revolving around human resources. So you might not want every individual user to be able to come on here, click on human resources and view what might be being said. So we can manage that within the administrative panel of Innovate. So if I quickly tap in admin, go to Innovate, and then okay, there you are. And we'll see there's a couple of options here. So there's two tabs. Settings is basically just how you would like the feed to go in terms of sorry, if you'd like it to automatically update, and what would be the time frame of these updates. But what we're really trying to be looking at here is the channels. So as I said, this is where you can manage permissions for your users to seeing certain information within Innovate. So as you can see, we've got a list of channels here. So we've got general, human resources, finance, support, marketing, and sales. Now, at any point other than the general one, we can choose to delete any of these, and at any point we can choose to edit any of these, and of course add new ones. So what we would do, for instance, with the human resources one, we can click on edit, and it will take us to a place where we can adjust its name if necessary, and we can see how we could manage potential permissions around this channel. So currently, as we can see, the group, so anyone who's within on your people application and you've managed your groups in a certain way, anyone who's in a human resources group here, so all your users you've added to that, for instance, have the right to view this. No, sorry, Kimberly, I just note everyone that Kimberly's asked the question here, and there is no limit to the channels that you can create. You can do as many as you would like there, really. But as you can see, when we're in here, you've got two options within your permissions fields. So for what we've currently got now is human resources, and they have the ability to view this, okay? And then if we go to administrators, we can see that they have the rights to view this also, and they have the admin rights, which means that they can edit and delete some people's posts, etc., if necessary. So you can choose to basically manage your securities and who can view these within this part of the intranet. So again, if we go back to general and just edit that one, for instance, we can see that all registered have the capability to view everything, and the administrators have view and admin rights. So what that would look like basically for a user who would come in here and they're not in, for instance, some of these specific groups, when they come onto the applications panel, or the admin application, the Innovate application, that's what I meant. Basically, on the left-hand side where the channels are listed, they will just basically be invisible and look like they don't exist. So I brought up an example of this. So if you just look at this, this is basically a different user's profile without admin rights. And we can see that they're still on the same page. This is admin. This is Innovate, but on the left-hand side, their channels are severely restricted. So they're obviously part of the human resources group, but other than that, they have no access to any of these channels. So of course they can still go on there, view everything there, but they couldn't go on marketing, finances, etc., etc. So that's how you would basically restrict any permissions and anyone's viewing rights within Innovate. So first off, Adam, does that answer your question in regards to the Innovate security? Admin, okay, thank you. If anyone can see, Adam's just asked what the admin rights give. So I'll show you an example of that. So basically, if you have admin rights, if I go back to Innovate, it gives you basically the additional permissions here. So you can choose to edit someone else's comments and delete them. So of course, if you're a general user, you can type in on here, and similar to Facebook, etc., you can edit and delete your own comments as you would normally be able to on a social media device or application. But as you can see, I'm clearly, of course, not Nigel or Dave, etc., but I can choose to delete their comments because I have the admin rights. Yes, and again, Adam's posted another question. When posting, the user does have to ensure that they selected the right channel. So when you're typing, it doesn't give you an option to select your channel there. You have to make sure that you are populated currently on the correct channel at this point. Type in and go from there. Oh. At this moment in time, Kimberly, no. It will basically go on indefinitely as far as I'm aware. There may be a possibility to sort of change that if necessary. But as far as I'm aware, it just goes on and on and on, similar to other things, you know, maybe something like Facebook, etc. But this is as far as it goes down. This is the first post that we've had on here. Okay, thank you. And Adam, again, on the homepage, this completely depends on your sort of design discussion when you're going through setting up your intranet. By default, and as you can see, ours, it populates and only shows up the general chat. But that can be changed and configured. There are some people's applications and some intranets that I've worked on and looked at, should I say, where in, say, the top right-hand corner here, opposite where it says Innovate, there can be a drop-down menu. And this will basically give you a selection, similar to if you were on the application, of which channel you would like to post in or view. So you could have a box here, you could drop it down and it would say general, human resources, marketing, etc., etc., etc. But as you can see on this one, that's not tailored for that circumstance, but it has the potential. Otherwise, it's just populated currently at general. Okay, so is everyone happy with that so far? That making sense for Innovate? Perfect. And Kimberly, I saw you had a question as well. Okay. Okay, so if it's not on the homepage, will a user be notified when a new message is sent? Not necessarily. It will, and I believe it notifies people that you are following and that sort of information, but just a general comment, no, it won't. You will receive a notification if someone, say, replies to yours, similar to, general, like Facebook again once more. If someone has replied to a post that you've made, it will notify you and send you a notification. And similar, you can basically, again, working like Facebook, you can tag other people. So I think it's yeah, so if you put an @ you can tag another person like that and share that. That would also send a notification to that user that you've basically tagged them in a post. Again, very similar to Facebook, but just a general post, no, that won't show up. A user can follow someone, let's have a look, by basically, if you go to people, and if you find a user's specific profile, etc., you have the rights to follow them from here. And you can do that again if you just click on the user's name, basically, or the user's profile picture on Innovate. It takes you to their profile. The version of Innovate, you mean? The overall internet. Sorry there, Kimberly. Let me just double check for you. Oh. I don't have access to this one, but I believe this is 6.4. No, 7.4. That's the one, isn't it? Sorry. Yes, so I'm currently on there. Oh, really? Okay. Well, what I can do for you then, Kimberly, in that regards, we can, after this, if I quickly email you after the sort of training session, etc., or the demonstration, just to discuss a few things. And what I'll do is I'll raise a change request for you, and we can maybe look at upgrading your current application. Okay? No problem at all. Thank you. So how is everyone else? Everyone else good with this? Well, at least this one, and we can move on to what I'm going to look at next is going to be knowledge base. So everyone happy? Okay. Right, so first thing I'm going to do with knowledge base is I'm going to look at it from the admin perspective first thing. So we're going to look here, all right? And we're just going to bring up a couple of things. So knowledge base is basically, the best way to describe it is a place one similar to Innovate. You can create specific categories about certain topics, certain parts of the intranet, or just general sort of know-how, and it allows users to post, sort similar to basically blogs and pieces of information surrounding that category to help other people sort of understand this. And users are also able to ask questions around these specific topics and categories. So the reason I've brought you to the admin side first is just to basically explain, very similar to Innovate, your permissions and your securities are balanced all around your categories once more. So you can see there's a couple of things to look at. As an admin, you can look at articles and questions. And basically your rights at this point as an admin are you can just go into the back end, choose to delete these questions, edit them, or just view them. And that's the same with the articles. And when we get to the front end, that might make a little bit more clarity. But what I really wanted to look at was just the categories. So you can see here, there's a couple more categories created on here, similar to once more like Innovate. And this again is where your permissions, etc., are managed. So we can go, for instance, into General. And General has a bit of information. It works slightly different. You choose your category's name. You can give it a parent, because these can work in a hierarchical level, these categories. And I'll show you that again quite shortly. Then it will give you an option to basically add a bit of text or an image, etc., for this category, just to give you a brief explanation of what might be going on inside this category, etc. And then further down, you have your permissions. So again, we can see currently for this one, we have all registered. And of course, you can see there's a lot more permissions that we have within knowledge base. So again, you have viewing rights. All registered can view this category. They can ask questions around this category. You could choose potentially to give them the opportunity to edit all the questions within this category, delete them. And again, with creating articles, publishing an article, editing all articles, and deleting. So what publish basically would mean is if you want someone to be able to create an article, but you don't want them to have just the permission to release that straight away, if you deny them publishing rights, it means that they have the opportunity to create this article, but it will have to be approved by another user first. So for instance, as you can see, administrators would be absolutely fine with it regardless. But if we wanted to say, for instance, give all registered the ability to create an article, it would still have to go through the administrators first in regards to that. I'm just going to take that off quickly. Then we have category experts. Now, category experts, as it says underneath here, are people, experts can endorse articles. This displays as an endorsement on the article view. So basically, a category expert has the rights. You would normally give the permissions to someone who might be well established in the field. You can't really assume that someone's well established with general stuff, but if it was a more stylized or specialized topic, maybe IT or something, for instance, you could say there's certain people who would be the experts and know more about this. So what they can then choose to do is endorse certain articles created by other users. And basically, when we get onto the front end, you'll see what that means. But it just shows that that article is worth taking note of and reading specifically, because it might be very, very interesting. And then there's this last button here, which basically allows you to say that only category experts can answer questions. So as you can see, all users currently can ask questions, and they also have the right to go and then answer these questions for these. Like if someone else asks a question, another user can go on there and answer it for them. But if you have that, so only category experts are allowed to answer these questions, then that basically prevents any other people having the access to do so. Even if you're an admin, etc., with this button selected, only the category experts will be able to do that. So I'm going to go into the front end now. Hopefully that will clear some things up. So if we go in, knowledge base here, and as you can see, relatively similar in terms of its initial layout. So we've got in the middle here, we've got all the articles currently, laid out in the most recent, so in a chronological order, but you can change that to A to Z or most popular if you'd like to. Done and done. You also have the option up here to go to questions instead of articles. So from here, this will view all the questions, and currently it's regarding all categories. You have a search option similar to how you did in Innovate. You have, instead of following and who you're following, etc., or who's following you, you have, again, the recent articles down here and the recent questions. So you may want to change that to something like A to Z, and that will still just give you a full display of the most recent articles and questions. You can also see on the left-hand side that we have the different categories that we were looking at. So if once more we were to press demo processes, it would bring us to, let's look at general. Because as we can see here, this will bring us to the image that we originally saw when we were editing the category. And then down here, we have a list of all the category, or all the articles within the category, and all the questions that are posted within that category as well. You can also see here, again, these are only available depending on your permissions, but you can choose to ask a question, and that will go directly to this category. And you can choose to create an article, which once more is relating directly to this category. Up on the top right, however, you have the options here to ask a question and create an article. And when you're doing it that way, it will give you an option to select which category that you're filing it into. You also have the option down here to subscribe to a specific category. So in doing so, we can see that we're now subscribed, and a blue flag has appeared next to these. So if we go back to all categories, we can see that anything that's within the category that we've subscribed to, you will see a blue flag next to those ones. So we can see those are to general. And further down, we'll probably, there we go, there's another one, etc., etc. So that's how a subscription would work for a category. It doesn't, it's good and worth noting now that it doesn't send you a notification every time, for instance, an article has been added to this category. However, if you were to, okay, so if an article falls under multiple categories, not in regards to the knowledge base, I'm afraid, Kimberly. So if anyone hasn't seen, Kimberly's asked if an article falls under multiple categories, is there a way to have this article appear under multiple categories? You could potentially, the best way I would suggest doing that is when you're writing the article, you could basically save that information onto like a Word document, finish writing it, assign it to one category, and then create the article once more, but assign it to a different category that way. The reason you can't just select multiple categories at one point is because of security, well, not security, but permissions again. So let's have a look. Oh, actually, yeah. So as you can see, you've only got the choice of the one category at this point. So you would say that's internet advice. But as I said, for instance, you might say that this article that you're going to recreate is within internet advice and something like demo processes. So you would create the article under demo processes, add the article, create it as you would like. And then you would have to come back, create another article, and then add that one manually to something else, to InfoCapture, for instance, if that's how you would like to do it. But unfortunately, from this current creating and building at this point, as I said, due to permissions, you can't create the same article in two separate places at one time, or two separate categories. Okay, so again, tags might help. Yes, that is correct. First off, I'll answer Kimberly's there, but Kevin, you've of course asked the question as well. So yes, Kimberly, the tags, as you said, will help. So for instance, you can have these tags here, and then if we go back to the homepage of this, we can see there is a tag cloud down here at the bottom. So you can potentially create specific tags that would tailor to that, and then you could add the tag on a specific article. Then they can simply just click that and it will bring up the list of all the articles that you've created under that tag. So you can do it that way if that would help. Okay, so first off, again, Adam's asked a question now as well, but I'm just going to go to Kevin's. So you're saying there, Kevin, sorry, that when you're searching in the main intranet, so if I go back to the home page, you're saying your intranet doesn't pull in anything from the knowledge base. So because it should do, so for instance, if I bring up a knowledge, let me just quickly look again. So if I type in, as we can see, it has a list of all the things that it's going to be pulling information from, and one of them is knowledge base. And we can in fact see that the first one is in fact a knowledge base article. So am I right to assume that when you're trying something similar there, Kevin, that's not actually working, correct? Strange. Okay, yes, that's definitely a good idea. Raise a ticket for that. It might just be a difference in version, for as far as I'm aware, but as I said, it should be able to definitely pull in knowledge base information. So as you can even see, if I was to click that, that would bring up solely knowledge based information. Okay, so again, sorry, just backtracking on a couple of questions here. So now, Adam, so some articles made available outside of the knowledge base, for example, pulling a list of articles to display on another site. So you may have to elaborate on this, but you're wondering if you create a knowledge base article within knowledge base, can you then perhaps get that to be reflected and mirrored onto a different site? Is that what you're saying? Okay. Not well, maybe. I'll be honest. There may be some coding that will allow you to do so, but I don't think so. You could possibly post a link or create a link. If you go to the actual, say, article here, this will give you an exact link and the ID, for instance, to this knowledge base article. So you can potentially do a link on a different page and say, have a look at this knowledge base article. This is something that you might find interesting. They can click that and it will take them directly to the article itself. Again, of course, if within the intranet this user has a permission to do so. But once more, as I said, due to permissions and stuff, it's very complicated to have things automatically pull directly into a different intranet page or internet page or website or anything along those lines other than Claromentis itself. No worries. Okay, and then the last question there, sorry, Kimberly. Okay, so again, let me just hopefully clarify this. So I'm assuming you're meaning when you're searching knowledge base from here, yes, it would bring up information, specific keywords, etc. But if you wanted to press on advanced search, you can search by individually which categories you want it to go through and types. So you could look for articles, etc. and you would just type in a keyword there. But other than, yes, if you're just to search anything there, it'll just bring up whatever's there. So again, that's all you'll get from a search. You may potentially be able to search tags, but because we have a tag cloud there, it doesn't necessarily require it. We haven't got it implemented into search there because we've got basically just clicking the tag and that will take you to searching for that specific tag anyways. So as I said, if you wanted to, this will, create all tags which you've made within knowledge base and they'll all appear here. Some are just larger because they're more popular, but you can go on any of them and that will bring you to the specific article that's been tagged by that. I may have to get back to you with an exact number. As far as I'm aware, it's largely unlimited. I mean, I don't want to say 100%, but as far as I'm aware, there's no cap on how many tags that you can have. But just to clarify for you, I'll just quickly double check sort of, with our devs, etc., just to make sure that that's not completely wrong, and provide you with that information again at the end of the session. Okay. Okay. So yes, okay, so that's basically a brief overview of this. I'll look into creating an article, etc., for you as well. There's also one thing that might have also brought or caught your eye, should I say, when looking at here, and this is this yellow tick. Now, if we scroll over that, we can see that that's the endorsement. So as an expert for the category, you can choose to endorse these. And then that will basically provide you with the information that's necessary. You can also, as you can see here, while clicking onto an article that is already created, we have an option, again, as I'm an administrator, I can choose to edit this, but we also have, I'm already subscribed, I'll untick that. Okay, doesn't want to unsubscribe, bear with me. Let's try this one. Yeah, we can see that we have the opportunities to subscribe to an article as well, not just the channel. And what this means is basically once we've subscribed to this article, we will receive notifications anytime someone posts a discussion within this. And as you can see, and why I started with Innovate, the component used to have a discussion on here is pulled in from Innovate as well. So it's the exact same component there. The only people who can endorse an article are the category experts. So if we look once more to the admin, when you're creating or just simply editing an already existing category, further down the bottom here with the category experts, anyone who's listed underneath here or within this box here, they're the ones who can endorse. Okay. And we can also see here questions. We can look at the question that's been posted. Here we go. And again, having a discussion or basically answering the question here is once more done by Innovate. You can see that there's been a specific one down here. And again, you can subscribe to individual questions as well as the article, etc. That's correct, Kimberly. Anything that requires a notification. So again, with this, so if I was to subscribe to this question and someone else replied back to Jennifer, yes, a notification would appear in the top right, exactly like any other notification. Okay, so would anyone quickly, no problem at all, Kimberly, that's fine. Would anyone like me to quickly just go through creating an article just so you can see how that works? Because of course I briefly just looked at it a second ago, but I don't mind. Yeah, okay, perfect. So as I said, as long as you have the rights, and again, depending on where you're adding this will dictate where the article is going to go. So once more, for instance, I could go into InfoCapture, create an article from here, and it will directly go into this one. Or I can go up to the top right, create an article here, and this will give me the opportunity to choose which category I'm posting in. And again, at this point, it's worth noting, similar to how I viewed the other user's profile when they were looking at Innovate, if you don't have rights to add articles to every single one of these categories, they just, again, won't exist. So you may only have rights for demo processors, general, and intranet advice. That means the others just would not exist for you. But I'm just going to do a quick general one. Okay. Now, at this point, the options are very sort of self-explanatory, but it's always good to quickly go over them. So we have the option to add a cover thumbnail image here. So that's what I'm just going to do. So it will allow you to upload one directly from your actual hard drive. So I'm going to go desktop. This one. Okay. Okay, and then it'll ask you basically to crop the image. So there we go. Okay, so when you then create the article, this is what's going to appear at the top, similar to maybe some of the other articles we looked at. You also have the ability at this point, if necessary, to actually embed a video if necessary. If depending on if the article requires. It's not, of course, mandatory to have one, but I'll show you how that works as well. And what this will do is basically replace the image in terms of where it would go when you click on the article itself. So I've got one up. And you simply just paste that in. Okay, and then this will bring you to the next part is what's called the CK editor. And anyone who's familiar with the internet in other sort of aspects of it, so maybe like news or publish, etc., will probably be quite familiar with this. This is just, it's populated everywhere on our intranet. It's just the thing to help you create all your content in terms of a written format. So it's just like a word processor, just like Microsoft Word or anything like that. From here, you have the capability to add links by clicking this button, uploading further images, getting some embedding videos from YouTube, etc., etc. So there's all this functionality. I've already done one video, so I'm not going to do that at the moment, but I'm going to cheat for 1 second. Let's have a look. Bear with me. I'm not very creative in writing sometimes, so I have to cheat. Here we go. So you can see it will be like that. And then you have the options here, as I said, you have enable commenting, you have draft, you have the capability to publish it, which means it's going live. Again, if you haven't given those rights, this won't be able to, well, it won't exist, or you can archive it. So if it's an article that's been around for some time, but you don't necessarily want to delete it, it could potentially be seasonal, I guess, something along those lines, then you can potentially archive it and bring it out again at a later point. I'm just going to add this as it's now live. There we go. And this is what we'll see. Can everyone, sorry, I've just got a private message from a colleague. Has my sound gone for everyone? Okay, fantastic. Kevin, as you've asked, you can't put an expiry for knowledge base articles. They're sort of indefinite, basically. And they're not really for a mandatory review. They're just basically there for people to look at some point. Basically, they're always good to have, but there's no like mandatory times for these to be done or looked at. So no, that's not possible. Adam, in regards to your question, there isn't, as when you say approval process, do you mean if a user wants to create an article? If they want to create an article there, do they have to then go through an approval process to have that done? Because that if that's the case, then yes. Basically, as I said, if we go back to, we can access admin from here as well, just so you know. But if we go back to the managing of the categories, when you're in the permissions here, if a user, as I says, has the rights to create an article, but they don't have the rights to publish an article, it basically means that they have to go through an approval process before it gets published. So they'll create it, but then someone like the role administrators will have to be the ones who actually publish that article, because they can't actually do that. They don't have the rights. See, so that permission create can, build it, they can write it, etc., but they just can't at the bottom of it where it said draft, publish, and archive. They just don't have the right to publish it unless that button selected as well. Notification. Okay, but yes, I'm going to revert them back now. Update the category. But yes, so that's how that works. If I go back to the home. Oh, okay, Kimberly. No, sorry, I missed that one. I saw a similar one from Kevin. But no, basically there isn't the ability to renew these. So there's no expiry date or anything along those lines. They basically just exist for people to come and look at any time. Yes, you can manually review them. So again, with the administrative rights. So for instance, if I go to my knowledge base article here, the one I've just created, scroll down, edit. Okay, and basically the best option would be to archive them from this point, so they wouldn't exist there. But you also have the right from managing the articles in the admin side, as we've been brought to now. So when you go either through admin and knowledge base, or again on the right hand side here, more, you can go to manage articles here. you can choose to actually just delete the article straight off the bat there. So with the X on the right, that will just get rid of that. Okay, so if we then go back to the home, no longer exists. My pleasure, no problem at all. So again, from a quick look, hopefully a simple perspective of everything there, does that make sense for knowledge base as well? Good. Okay. And then the last one I want to look at then, of course, today or for this session is going to be idea spaces. And the reason I left idea spaces for the last, or till last, should I say, if I want to use proper grammar. If I go to the admin again, the reason for this was because the difference between, say, for instance, idea spaces, innovate, and knowledge bases we've looked at is their permission management. So with knowledge base and innovate, of course, the permissions are maintained through the channels or the categories, and they'll be done again, as we can see on an admin for idea spaces here. We have categories, but your permissions aren't managed through them for this. The actual permissions are managed through each of the idea spaces that are created. So you have two different options of permissions here. Okay, so the first one is your permissions button, as you can see. And basically how permissions work, or permissions from this level, is your overall permissions for the the idea space application. So as you can see, there's only two options for this, but you currently have all registered having the ability to create idea spaces, and administrators have the rights to create an admin. And basically what admin means at this point is that they are able to edit, delete, and archive basically all of the idea spaces in the application. So anyone who creates an idea space, that's fine, but admins can come and delete any of them. Then we have default permissions, which is slightly different. Because these are referring to the permissions within the idea space that you're creating, not just the overall application. That should hopefully make a bit more sense in a second. But as you can see, there's three options here. So we currently have all registered have the right to view these. And basically what this means is they have the right to view and contribute to any of the idea spaces that are existing, or this specific idea space that you've created. You have the right to edit. So users, basically within IdeaSpace, you have the option to create events and tasks for users as well. The best sort of use, or a good description of IdeaSpaces, is that it's like a module that helps employees collaborate on certain areas within the business. And I know, again, this was one of your questions there, Adam, in regards to, ideas for best practice of IdeaSpaces. And for instance, bear with me, sorry. For instance, you could create specific idea spaces revolving around maybe project management. So there might be some kind of new thing that's being integrated within your organization. You can create an idea space for everyone who's involved with this to utilize it, contribute, set tasks for one another, and create events, etc., etc. It can also be used for something as simple and basic as like a birthday planning committee, if you'd really want to. It could just be a place, and it's just a great place for people to set up these individual spaces, just so that they, with other people and the permissions they define for them, to come into this, have a view, and basically explain and bounce ideas between one another. And hopefully once I actually show you from the front end, that might make it a little bit clearer. But as I said, default permissions, you currently have users here having viewing rights and editing rights, which would mean edit means that they can, as I said, add tasks and events for other people and edit them. And then admin basically means, once more, they have the right to delete this specific idea space that you're creating. So at this point, this means for every single idea space created, But for instance here, this one only represents this individual one. And it also means that they can delete posts which are created within the idea space. And as I said, I'm going to go to the front end now, and that should hopefully make it a little bit clearer. So I'm just going to go to idea spaces. Okay. We can see, again, relatively similar format. We've got our clouds, tag cloud once more. There's no searching options here, but it's over here now. And we have two different lists of searching. So we have all your specific bookmarked ones, hot topics, and I'll explain what a hot topic is in a minute, archive ones, and then we have our categories. So we have all, so currently we're viewing these, and as I said, categories in this circumstance, they're not permission based. Categories are solely used to sort of help you filter and search for specific ones of ease. So they might have a lot of idea spaces and suggestions and a lot within company culture. So instead of having to search through all of them in one go, you can do that, and it will filter it down to that one particular category. As you can see, you can bookmark any of these specific idea spaces which you deem important. Bookmarked, and then that will appear, though it doesn't want to at the moment. Let's have a look. Let's refresh. There we go. And that will help you sort of keep tabs on any of the idea spaces that you find of interest. You can also search or filter how you're searching for them up here on the right. So you can sort by date, icon, list, or mixed view. Now, if we click on the idea space, we can see there's not too much to it. So from here, again, it's very similar to probably what we've seen on the previous applications, but we have the idea space, and what would happen is when you're creating your own, you'd give it your title, as we have here, and then a brief sort of understanding of what this idea space is about. So as we can see here, it's suggestions for software enhancement. And then as a user, if you have the rights to, of course, come onto this one, view and contribute, you can then, similar with this, and just having an Innovate component, just post what you think would be really good to improve, for software enhancement, as it says on here. So it's Google Drive, etc., etc. And then people can, of course, reply to these individual ones. They can post their own questions, they can or ideas, etc., etc. And as I said, it's just a really good place or idea or area for everyone to collaborate, really get behind something, and ideally enhance it for the better. I think another one that we've got on here, let me just go back, home, making Claromentis better. So if we click on here, and this is probably a good best practice in regards to what you might be looking for, Adam. So you can have it as a place to improve your overall organization. So we've got here an idea space, so ideas and suggestions for making Claromentis better. And it's simply just a place for people to post their suggestions and what they think would be a really good idea. As you can see on the right, we've got a list of upcoming events and your tasks and the list of contributors and the tags for this specific idea space. So you can see who else has contributed, etc., etc. And then depending on if you have these rights within this specific idea space, you can choose to then click on events. This will give you a list of all the, as you can see, the events in regards to that. And you can choose to add another event for this. So for instance, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Let's have a look. No, thank you for that, Adam. No, they're completely isolated within the idea space themselves. It uses the same component as Innovate, but they're never on a different channel, etc. They'll always remain within their idea space. But yes, as you can see, you can choose to create an event at this point. However you want. I can't think of anything, so I'm going to move on. The posts themselves, Kimberly, or the idea space? I believe they are. Let me just have a look. Yes, as we can see up here, this representation shows it. So they are on a site-wide search, but I think if at least I got that incorrect, Adam was explaining the actual feed within the idea space. So you can't locate this chat, whatever's happening in terms of this discussion, it won't be found anywhere within there. But I may have misinterpreted that. If not, I apologize. Or if I have, I apologize. But yes, you can search for the idea space from anywhere. Okay. But yes, so you can, as I said, you can add events. You also have the opportunity, if you are with the right permissions, to set tasks. So as you can see here, we have this ability. From here, just lets you search the current tasks that are available. So depending on how many there are, you can search for a long list, or you can choose to add your own task. So I'm really creative sometimes, I know. And then you can choose, as I said, these don't have to be given to yourself. You can actually, depending on, if you're like a project manager or if you're all collaborating here, you can assign this task to another person. So I can say, this task is for this person, this user, and then you can have a due date. So I'm going to say that this is due for the Monday, the 7th of December. And then there's no predominant color coding priority on here. You can just choose what this represents yourself. But say this is red, so we can say that that's really important to be done. And then the next option here is if this is a repeatable task. So you can say that depending on what the task might be, it has to be repeated by the same user on a weekly time frame, a monthly time frame, annually, never, or daily. Just going to keep it as never for this. And then add this task. And of course, I'm not Abigail Clark, unfortunately, but what you would find is if we logged onto her profile, she would receive a notification saying a new task has been assigned for you within the idea space such and such. And then it will be for her to come on here, organize that, and get that sorted. You can also choose to upload files and attachments, and they can be done, as you can see, there's nothing here to choose that. That will be done from here. So when you're actually typing in or contributing, you can choose to add a file or an internal document. So I could say, oh, been a bit strange. But yes, ideally, or how it should work, is the capability to then add a file from here, and then these would all be visible from this point, so all users don't have to filter through everything. I think there might be a little bit of a bug on here, so I'll notify us our bug testers of that, because that's not great. But yes, as you can see, there's supposed to be one here, so it should show. And again, with links, not working, but again, a link should be here if there has been one posted in the comments. And then at last, as a user, you have the opportunity to add another note or add a note. So this could be something of importance for everyone to look at, and it's not necessarily a comment or an idea that you would choose to collaborate. It's just it could be like a disclaimer or something, for instance. So okay, save this note. Okay, and then so when we went back to here, this is a good representation, but a note again should appear here. Let me just refresh it. There we go. So as you can see, this, you could, for instance, just have specific notes here which are of relative importance and not necessarily something relating to your collaboration. So as we can see, that's a disclaimer. A user can come and click on here. Well, I've gone to myself. There we see, we can do that. And then people can comment on this note if necessary. Again, it's very simple, very straightforward in terms of what you can do. I won't let you know what a hot topic is in regards to this. So a hot topic is something that's been added here. So if there's over 10 collaborators over a period of time, 10 comments have been made on here within sort of a short period of time, this will become what's called a hot topic. So it's a way to, encourage other users and their interactions. So if there's a specific one, say for instance, making Claromentis better, a lot of people are getting involved and contributing to him. 10 go by in a relatively short succession, it will appear as a hot topic for other users. So when they come onto idea spaces, they might see that there's a hot topic. They'll look at that and go, oh, this is interesting. Of course, there isn't one at the moment, but then they can then choose on there and contribute. I think the last thing to really sort of show you in regards to these, if anyone hasn't read that, Kimberly's just asked quickly if there's a way to designate the number of hot topics. I believe there might be. Yeah, that's a good point, Kimberly. Right. Strictly speaking, as far as I'm aware, I will be completely honest, there isn't. And I suppose, depending on what you're planning to use your idea spaces for, that could, of course, as you say, cause a problem. I mean, idea spaces, I suppose, are really just used for these quick collaborative ideas, and something like this, as I said, with permissions being managed individually on each idea space, some of your 8,000 employees, for instance, might not be able to contribute to specific idea spaces because the permissions aren't there for them. So it might be that they just don't have access to these. And the ones that you want all 8,000 employees to be looking at, maybe you would particularly want that to be a hot topic. I see your point, though, and I completely understand. I would have to say I don't think it is possible, but it is something worth noting, and maybe that could be something we could look at maybe enhancing or changing in the future. That's okay, Kimberly. But yes, as I said, I'm just going to quickly create one as well, just to show you how the permissions are different and varied from how they were on the previous applications. So, as I said, I'm just going to create an idea space. Okay. So, okay. And then, as I said, this isn't obviously your general, completely decked out CK editor. This is a small abstract version, so you can put a reasonable amount of text in it. But this is, again, this description is only for you to give a rough explanation of what you're providing within this idea space. It's not for, War and Peace. So let's have a look. So let's say words. Okay. And then you'll find something different here, is the fact that, as you were saying, with knowledge base, for instance, you can actually have multiple categories for these idea spaces. Because their permissions aren't governed within the categories, you can choose to have as many categories as you would like. So it might fall under different things, and it just helps users search them. So that's a capability within the idea space. And again, you have your tag searching capability. So we'd say those. And then, as we can see, when we were looking on the admin panel, we had the default permissions changing. And we saw it was these 3 different permissions. So what that basically did from an admin side is, by default, every time you're creating an idea space, all registered are going to have these rights, and administrators are going to have these rights. But while you're creating the actual idea space itself, you can choose to change that. If that's not what you want for this specific idea space, you can get rid of that. So you can remove that all registered have these rights, and say, for instance, this is an idea space for finance. And then you can say that the finance people have the view and edit rights instead of all registered. So this one's, of course, going to remain invisible to anyone who isn't within the finance group. Role administrators will still have the same responsibilities, if you, of course, want that to be the case. And for instance, for this specific idea space, you can say, I'm pretty sure Hannah's in the administrators, but nonetheless, you can say that Hannah, as an individual user, has these admin rights just for this individual idea space. So this isn't obviously going to run through all of them, but for this one, you can give certain users, for instance, or a specific group, the admin rights. Then down here, the last thing to really look at is the notifications. So you can choose to send this notification to users who have the rights to view the idea space. So if, say for instance, you're creating this new idea space for these administrators, you want everyone to be aware of it and contribute and think it's great. So you can click on here, and then that will send a notification, and it will be a default notification, which at the moment is such and such user has created such and such idea space, please look, etc., etc. But you can choose to alter that if you would like. So you can write whatever you want in here, and what that will do, I'm going to get rid of this, I know it's almost over, but nonetheless, so what you can do is write in here, and whatever you write will be displayed in the notification when sent to the users. So I'm just going to untick that for now, but as I said, if that was written and if that was ticked and this was populated, this would send a notification to the users. If you don't populate this, it will just send a default notification, but it's completely down to your preference. So if I create this idea space, actually, first off, you also have the right to choose an image here as well. I'm going to choose this one. There we go. There we go. And as you can see, it's exactly how the others were. So you can then choose to contribute, create how you would, and then everything just works the same. So we would have your tasks and events. Because there's, of course, no links or files currently attached to this idea space, that's why those aren't visible like they were in the Making Claromentis Better one. But if we were to do this, for instance, that would be there. And then what you should see is if I refresh it again, there we go. We can see that a file's now been attached, but we're just a little bit finicky at the moment, it seems. So this is worth looking at for bugs. But yeah, there we go. That will exist there. But again, in a rough nutshell, that's basically idea spaces. So there isn't too much to it. It's just a really good place if you want to create these idea spaces, just for people to come together, contribute, and maybe come up with a great idea for something. Is there any questions roughly revolving around that? Okay. Perfect. Okay. Well, as I said, we've shortly just gone over our session time there by 10 minutes. No big problem. I hope this has at least been informative for you guys, and I hope, as I said, this explains some things for you. If you do have any other questions after this session, please feel free just to email me, and I'll get back to you. I believe there's a couple of things that we were going to look at as well there, Kimberly, weren't we? So I'll get onto that with you after the session. No problem at all, Kimberly. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great, well, I suppose it's Friday now, isn't it? So everyone have a great weekend, and all take care of yourself. As I said, I'm going to stop this as a recording, and then I'm going to post it, or it'll be posted up on Facebook, YouTube even, very, very shortly, and then we can review from there. Okay, take care now, guys.